Hey everyone, so my last video was kind of a 5 full fragrances that you can wear that are safe for almost any occasion, any time. It's quite an introductory video, I guess, in a way. Later on this week I'm going to be doing my own personal fragrances that I'll be wearing this fall. It will be a little bit more diverse. It's going to have a lot more niche, a little bit of designer, a little bit of cheapy, so it's going to kind of be a bit broader. But yeah, in that last video I made, I said that I would make individual reviews for each of the fragrances, so if any of them kind of piqued your interest, you can have a look. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So now we're going to be having a look at Burberry London. So the bottle for Burberry London, it's quite nice. It's a bit, it comes with this sort of wrap that's, you know, the Burberry kind of texture wrap, which is quite nice. It is a proper material wrap on it, but it's glued in like 1 or 2 places. I think you can sort of see it's glued there, and but it just kind of gets this kind of saggy kind ofness going on. I mean, what's that all about? But anyway, you know, it's okay. And also I don't like the fact that it only shows, it doesn't cover the entire bottle, so you get a part of the bottom, but it overlaps on the top, so you get this kind of weird sagginess to it. It's a bit weird. But yeah, the bottom is just a sticker with the information and the batch number on it. It is printed over the top of the sticker, you can see there. Yeah, the lid is also crap. It doesn't really hold the weight of the bottle, so it just comes off. That annoys me, but it's, you know, it's okay. In many respects, I think it would actually look better if you just took this off and it was just like a monolithic black kind of squares, I think that, or rectangles. I think that would be quite nice, but yeah, it is what it is. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. The sprayer is good on it. It's yeah, it works really well. It doesn't look fancy, but it works well. Lid, yeah, it just kind of half clips on and off, but it mostly just, I mean, it's one of the most frustrating lids ever. It's just rubbish. But yeah, that's the bottle for Burberry London. Okay, so Burberry London, apart from the weird foreskinny bottle and the kind of crap lid, you know, what is it? So it was brought out in 2006 and it was made by Antoine Maison-Dieu. He made Burberry Brit, which is, you know, quite a big Burberry. Probably most famously, he made Armani Code. He's worked with Paul Smith, Comme des Garçons, Acqua di Parma, État Libre d'Orange. So, you know, he's been around. He's not a nobody. And yeah, he came out with this in 2006. So a lot of people say it's sort of fall in a bottle or Christmas in a bottle, or, you know, it smells like the holiday season, and I can kind of see that. So, you know, if you look at the note breakdown for a start, so in the top, you know, in terms of the note breakdown, in the top you've got lavender, bergamot, cinnamon. In the sort of heart, the middle, you've got mimosa and leather, and in the base you've got a Popanax, tobacco, and oak moss, which is a note that is predominant in this, in my opinion, and Gaiac wood. So that's pretty much the note breakdown. So it's quite, you know, it's not overly complex, but it's not simple either. It's got some interesting notes in there. It's about how do they actually work. So, you know, let's talk about that a little bit. Now, so a lot of people say it's a fall in a bottle or Christmas in a bottle, and I do get that to a degree, but I think it's that kind of plays it down a little bit. I've got it on a dry down here, and interestingly, that kind of that fall in a bottle vibe is completely gone. I sprayed this maybe like 5 or 6 hours ago now, so it's proper, you know, it's deep in the sort of end of its life now. At this point, you know, it's real deep in the dry down, and that kind of fall in a bottle idea is really gone, and instead it's replaced. The oak moss and the Gaiac wood are really predominant, and the sort of tobacco, it's this sort of cherry tobacco smell. It are really the predominant notes in the dry down. But before we get there, let's talk about that Oakmoss, because when you first spray it, I feel like that's quite predominant, and it's not very talked about very much. So let's spray it and see what it smells like. So the spray is pretty good. I don't know if that was out of shot there, but the spray is pretty good. It works really well. So okay, so straight off the bat, you kind of smashed in the face with a heavy dose of greenery, sort of pine, evergreen trees, and I think that is largely why people say it's sort of Christmas in a bottle, because it's got that Christmas tree smell to it, and then there's a sort of heavy cinnamon in there as well. That's really nice, actually. Just a nice little bit of sweetness and sort of spiciness. It's really cozy. It makes me smile every time I smell it. But right underneath, and a note that I've rarely heard people talk about is the oak moss in this, and that oak moss is very reminiscent of a lot of 80s powerhouses, notably for myself, Kouros, and it's my biggest problem with this fragrance, and it's why I don't wear it very much. It's because my dad used to wear Kouros in the 80s all the time, so when I smell this, I get that Oakmoss vibe, and it immediately kind of makes me feel like I'm smelling like my dad, which is not something I really want to smell like. But it's definitely there. It's quite predominant. You've got, I would say, mainly pine, and then underneath that, oak moss, and that's really all you're getting, apart from that cinnamon, just to sweeten it up a little. Now, interestingly, the oak moss doesn't make it smell too dated, gives it a sort of almost a root in those kind of 80s powerhouses, but it's modern. It's more modern. That the cinnamon, I believe, is probably what kind of creates it, sort of makes it feel a little more modern, because otherwise you've got sort of green woods and pines with a bit of oak moss. And I mean, if you say that to someone, rather than Fall in a Bottle or Christmas in a Bottle, you're really looking at fougères and things like that, and that sort of vibe of fragrance. And maybe is it chypre as well, but instead the cinnamon brings it up a little and modernizes it and makes it something a little different, gives it something a little bit extra. And at this point, because this is not really a linear fragrance, I don't think, at this point, quite quickly, it starts passing into sort of its second stage after just a few minutes, and you start smelling sort of boozy cherry underneath that kind of melds with that cinnamon. And then I think that's when it hits its stride, and people say, oh, this smells like Fall in a Bottle, because you've got this sort of Christmas tree, fir tree, pine tree kind of evergreen vibe with the cinnamon, and then this kind of boozy cherry, which I suppose is a sort of port sort of smell to it. And then you start thinking, yeah, okay, I can see this is like a homely, warm sort of holiday fragrance, and I get it. I do get it, but it's still got that little bit of oak moss just to kind of make it sort of that undercurrent of kind of 80s powerhouse in there, which rubs me the wrong way a little bit. But it's good. In this fragrance, it's good. When I talk about this fragrance, it's difficult because for me, there's a lot of, I have a lot of personal sort of dislike of Kouros, I suppose. It's not a dislike, it's more a nostalgia, but it's a nostalgia that isn't particularly positive in terms of what I want to wear. So it's nostalgic in a good way. Like of course I like remembering being a child in the 80s and smelling my dad when he would put on Kouros and things like that. But so that's all positive to me, and maybe that's why this makes me smile to a degree, but it's just not what I want to smell like. And that's my biggest problem with this fragrance. But I think it's a really nice fragrance, and I definitely think it's fantastic for fall and winter, and I think it's really works, and I really rate it for the price. I think it's criminally underrated, and I think it's definitely worth a buy. But for me personally, I prefer smelling it on other people rather than smelling it myself. It's very masculine fragrance, so aside of that cinnamon, it's still very masculine. I would say if you were female, you might struggle with, you'd have to be, because of that oak moss, you know, you would have to be very confident to pull this off. Which, you know, if you are, go for it, you know, but I would say because of that oak moss, it might be difficult, and you'd have to really wear it like you like own it, if you know what I mean. Which is, you know, go for it if you like that sort of thing and you can pull it off. But to get back to the smell, yeah, I don't get much mimosa and leather, to be honest. I don't like the dry down. I suppose there's a little bit of leather in there, but really it's, for me, I'm rather than that, I'm getting the woods and the tobacco more than anything. But yeah, it's a really good fragrance, and it's really homely, and it really makes me smile. It's not sexy at all. I wouldn't say it's a date night fragrance at all. I would say it's a much better daytime fragrance than anything else. And I would say more, I think you could wear it at any time, but I would say daytime, sort of casual wear, really would suit this well. I think it's a little bit playful to be worn formally, because it suggests a little bit too much sort of coziness and comfort, so it's not so rigid. But it smells really, really playful, and it really makes me smile to smell it. I really enjoy it. It's great. It's a really good fragrance. I was personally interested in it because of the cherry note, and that is there, but it's a very boozy cherry, and it comes in, I would say after about an hour you get the kind of height of that cherry note, that kind of boozy cherryness, and it lasts not that long. It only lasts for about an hour or so, and then it starts fading away and giving out to the base a little bit more, and it's there after that, but it's not predominant. Now, if you're interested in a cherry note, because say for me, I was like, oh, you know, cherry in a fragrance, I'd quite like that. So, you know, or I'd quite like to try that, which is why I initially bought this. But if you are interested in a cherry, I would say a better cherry is L'Homme Ideal by Guerlain, the eau de parfum, and that is much more of a predominant cherry, and it's basically cherry and vanilla, big cherry and vanilla bomb, and it's really, really nice. And say, especially as a woman, you'd be able to pull this off much more than this on, I think. So yeah, if you're interested in a cherry, there's that one. I just wanted to kind of chuck it out there. But otherwise, to get back to Burberry London, I think it's a really great fragrance, and I really enjoy smelling it. It makes me smile every time I smell it, but it's just not something that I would wear myself, because I just struggle with that kind of Kouros attachment, that oak moss attachment to it. It doesn't smell like Kouros. I should point out that it doesn't smell like Kouros at all. It's just purely that one note, oak moss. I tend to avoid oak moss for that exact reason when it's kind of in there. And I rarely hear it mentioned in this fragrance. Whenever I see reviews about this or read reviews about it, you always get people talking about the boozy cherryness and the greens and the kind of evergreen fir trees and things like that. And that's true, that's definitely there, but I don't know how you can ignore that oak moss, because it's quite strong and it is definitely in this fragrance. If you like oak moss and you're looking for something in the fall, I would say no, definitely check this out. This is really cheap, and it's, you know, it's definitely there. So yeah, you could possibly check that out. So if you like masculine fragrances that are very sort of masculine and maybe a little playful, I'd say check this out. It might be up your street. But yeah, otherwise that's pretty much it. I think it's a good fragrance. I think it's interesting, and I wouldn't say it's complex, but it's got a lot going on in there, and it's not that linear. It changes as it dries quite nicely. So you start with the kind of big fur, kind of big green sort of fur and a little bit of boozy cherryness, and then it kind of ends on a more sort of woodsy oak moss tobacco vibe, which is, it's really interesting, and I love that about it. So I think it's a great fragrance. I tell you one thing I do wish is it hung on to that green evergreen vibe a little bit longer, that kind of Christmas tree vibe, if you like, with the cinnamon and the cherry, because I really like that part of this fragrance. But unfortunately it's in the top, but it fades relatively quickly. It fades after an hour or so of wearing it, and then you kind of say, and then it sort of transitions into a boozy cherry that then later sort of transitions into that kind of woods and tobacco kind of vibe with a little bit of tiny bit of cherry in there in the back, sort of thing. So yeah, I wish it sort of stuck around on those top notes a little longer, but unfortunately they disappear a little too quick for me. If it hung around at the point it's at now for hours on end, I would wear this a lot more. But yeah, anyway, otherwise I think it's a great fragrance. I think it's really nice for fall and winter. I wouldn't wear it much. Perhaps I'd wear it in the spring a little bit. I think you could probably get away with it in the spring. I don't think I'd wear it in the summer. I don't think that would be very pleasant. I think that maybe that kind of boozy cherry might be a little bit sicky in the summer, a little bit kind of, but a bit cloying. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's a nice fragrance, and for the price, it's really cheap. And if you're into Oakmoss and that kind of vibe, but you want a modern take, then I would say snap it up, because it'd probably be right up your street. So yeah, that's pretty much my review for Burberry London. It's a nice fragrance. I don't get much wear of it because it doesn't sit well with me sort of on a personal level, but I can appreciate it. I think it's a nice fragrance, and for the price, I think it's really good. So yeah, that's my review. Cheers. If you want to see more of this content, let me know. Suggest things that I can review. I've got all sorts. I like sort of niche, designer, cheapies, anything. I just like fragrances. Yeah, just anything. Comments, whack it in. Thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. You know the drill. Cheers. See ya.